So today I present you Samya.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here, and I will take you through a personal journey from France to the Silicon Valley, to the Himalayas, back to the Silicon Valley, and the writing of this book. My journey started in France, in the southern part of France. I was born around here, and I lived around here for about 18 years of my life. I moved to a small town when I was about 17 or 16 years old, and I was living in a small town when I was about 16, 17 years old, and at the time I was studying for my baccalaureate. It was in language and philosophy, and I loved to travel. My neighbor was a dentist, and he was also a Rotarian.
Wow. Wow.
A Rotarian.
Is he here?
And he's not here, but he was a Rotarian, and he suggested to my parents, since I loved languages and I love to travel, why don't I apply for a student scholarship through the Rotary Club? And he filed the application, and I did. And my father took me to the interview. And that's where my journey started, with the United States of America.
Wow.
So I landed in Charleston, South Carolina in 1986, here. In fact, I lived in Mount Pleasant for about a year with the Rotary Club. And I had a great time, and I improved my English. I knew English at the time, but I came here and I improved my English, and it was because of the Rotary that I came here, so I just wanted to mention this. As I was living in Mount Pleasant, I went and attended a couple of courses in a local high school. But at the time, I had my baccalaureate. It was not expected, because normally this is not at 17. You don't get a baccalaureate at 17. You get a baccalaureate somewhere around 18 years old. But I had my baccalaureate, and I used that here to learn English and improve my skill. Now, as you all know, with the Rotary Club, after you finished a year of 1 year scholarship, as a foreign exchange student, you're supposed to go back to your country. And I did, just for the summer. But I just managed to enroll at the University of the College of Charleston. So I came back on my own. I got a scholarship from the College of Charleston, which is one of the oldest university in the country. I think it's the 17th oldest university in the country. I got my BA there with some scholarship, and because I already had my baccalaureate, they gave me 2 years of credit. I went and continued my journey in education, but in between I went back when I graduated from my bachelor degree from the College of Charleston. Ironically, my first job in the United States was to go back and teach in the high school that the Rotary had sent me. So I went back as a teacher 2 years after I was a student in that high school and improved my English. Then I worked for the state of South Carolina on some migrant workers cause, but eventually ended up getting another scholarship and did my master's degree at the University of Columbia. There I continued my studies in languages, philosophy, and linguistics, and I met an extraordinary professor, which was emeritus from Penn State University. And he was a great scholar and a linguistic professor. I was on a scholarship again with my master's degree. I had teaching and research assistantship. So I kept telling him, Dr. Velasco, if I ever leave academics, because until then I was still in academics, that's the only way I could stay in the US. If I ever leave academics, I may just do something with computers. I think we could teach people how to learn languages with computers, and I think programming language have a lot to do with linguistics. And he said, well, that's interesting. But then I just put that aside, and then I went on to my PhD at the University of Austin. And at that point, I was still studying linguistics, literature, comparative literature. I was doing still the artsy stuff, the writing stuff, the yoga, the dance, and everything you want to associate with that kind of side of the mind and creative side. Then I got married, and I visited. My husband got transferred to California, to the Bay Area, and that's how I landed in 1995 in the Bay Area. I was about 2 years into my PhD, about 1 year to continue, but I just wanted to be with my husband, so I decided maybe I go to California, see what's out there, maybe go to Berkeley or Stanford, or I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And this is really the crossroad of my life. I was in academic for a long time, and I just didn't know. And so I remember at this point, okay, I'm in the Silicon Valley. Dr. Velasco and I had this huge discussion on how I should go maybe into the outside world, apply some of the linguistic skills I had, work for the software industry, which was a possibility. Then the other possibility is to continue to lead, my little artsy life and go to Stanford or Berkeley, or at that point I was married, and I got married in India, so I fell in love with the whole idea of yoga, the culture, and so on. So it's really this 1995 kind of, where do I go from here? And then just one day I applied for a job, and I got a job for a software company, to my surprise. I was surprised, and I was able to transfer the skills effectively, those skills that I had discussed with Dr. Velasco for so long, applying the linguistic background to the software industry. In fact, I began working for a company that is not listed here, but offers services to all the top tiers companies in the Silicon Valley. At the time, we were re-architecting products so it would work in other languages in other countries. And that propelled me into a career leading engineering teams, nothing to do with my background, and I ended up doing this, becoming an engineering director. I started with Sybase, that was just the beginning. Then I got this phone call from this small startup. I didn't know anything about startup. I mean, my whole world in the United States was book. That's all I knew, book, studying, scholarship and whatnot. And I got this call, this person is trying to explain to me the kind of job they have. And I said, well, I think you're looking for a couple of persons, so here is my advice. And then the person called me back and she said, well, would you like to come for an interview? I said, why not? Okay. And so I joined this company at the time, which was a very small company called Unwire Planet at IPO at fund.com. Became a huge success. We developed all the mobile backends. We deployed worldwide with the 70 top operators worldwide. We have basically helped build the mobile industry, what you have today, and why you have cell phones and why they worked. I became a director pretty much overnight. I had a team of 100 people. We had 1 billion insets worldwide, and that was kind of what happened. Suddenly, from the academic person, I became this director of engineering. And I continue. I started with Danger, which I got acquired by Microsoft. After that, I went and worked with PhotoBucket, which was a division of News Corp when they were trying to build all these multimedia consortium, companies. They had MySpace. Most of you know of MySpace. You probably don't know of PhotoBucket. But anyhow, I was the head, thank you. I was the head of the international expansion for PhotoBucket, they were trying to mimic what to do with that particular product. Should they do the same thing as they did with MySpace and what's not? But at that time, the economy was starting to go down. It was around 2009, 2010. So I showed them and did the business plan for them, the analysis, all the forecasting, very different kind of brain, very engineering, very mathematical, a very different kind of me, right, by that time. And we just advised them that probably it was not a good idea given the economy to do so much expansion because we were not sure where the global economy was coming, but also there was some advantage of doing global expansion, so I gave them that kind of choice. And then I went on to head the Lab 126. You probably don't know what this is. This is the R&D, the Research and Development Department for Amazon. And I went and led the international expansion for their flagship product, which was the Kindle. Most people know that. However, by the time I got to 2011, I just felt like a fish swimming upstream, right? But I was swimming on the other side. I was burned out. I think what happened is I had used too much of that side of the brain. So for 10 years, I was using too much of the creative side of the brain. And then for another 14 years, I was using too much of the scientific mind. And I was just not becoming too much apart. And I was changing too much. And I was completely burned out. So I had a huge career in the software industry, you know, director and above, a dream job, but I just couldn't do it anymore. So one day I just woke up and I had this conversation with my father-in-law, and he said, you know, what's going on? And I said, I think I'm just burned out. I'm just not sure. You know, I spent 10 years in academics and working really hard, and I have spent 15 years in the software industry or so. And I'm completely burned out. I have this great job, everybody wants this job, everybody would die. A lot of people would want to have this job, this career. Who doesn't want to be a principal at Amazon, right? Who doesn't want to lead a flagship product, work with Jeff Bezos and the like? But I just couldn't do it anymore. And as I was looking at this, I just had a flashback in the conversation with my father-in-law, kind of a little bit the same conversation that I had with my father, who took me to the Rotary Club interview, right? That changed my life, that brought me to the US. Now I'm having this conversation with my father-in-law. I'm just not sure, I have all these dreams. But it feels like I have just lived one dream in the last 14 years, and I have put everything else aside. And then in a flashback, suddenly, as I was talking to him, something propelled me back to 1995, to that vision of the world I had, and all those dreams. And I had, by then, the yoga and all that stuff just didn't have time for it. And that was, unfortunately, not good. And probably if I had time, knowing what I know now, for the yoga and continue all of that, I probably wouldn't have ended up where I ended up burned out. So anyhow, I just packed my bag and decided to go and live in the Himalayas. So I just decided, and nobody could understand this, I decided to go especially where there was not a lot of people and where it was not commercial. I just wanted to find my roots again. I wanted to be in a small place. That's where I grew up in France. I grew up in a very small place. Before the Rotary, before all of this, my world was a town that I considered a city, which is 10,000 inhabitants, right? So that's how big my world was. My grandmother lives in a town that has 300 people who live there. So it's kind of the perspective, right? And now I'm like in the Silicon Valley, the heart of all of those things and so on. So I went back to my roots. And I went and found a place somewhere here. So this is the spiritual world of India, but the place I found was here in Dharamsala, just above actually Dharamsala. And some of you may know what do you know where Dharamsala is? Okay, some of you know Dharamsala perhaps because that's where the Dalai Lama lives in exile and the Tibetan community live there. So I found myself there. So that's one picture of the Tibetan temple you find in Dharamsala. But I was still too crowded for me, so I went and lived somewhere around here. You know, in the middle of the mountains, where you had to take a walk for 30 minutes up the stairs, and I lived in this ashram here. You can see the valley down there. And it was interesting because fate had it again that I was the only one who was able to climb that mountains before the monsoon season started again. So most of the people were supposed to stay at the ashram with me and learn. there from the local yogi got stuck at the bottom of the hill. So I spent about 2 weeks or 3 weeks having all those teachers teaching me all the things that I wanted to know, and it kept going back, and it's almost like I was backtracking and speed-tracking and catching up with the things I had left behind in 1995. Everything was going very fast. I had a local priest that was teaching me Sanskrit so I could pronounce the mantras properly. Now keep in mind that when I was studying with Dr. Velasco, the reason why I study linguistics is because I was studying ancient manuscript with them. I was reading old French manuscript, old English manuscripts. That's the reason why I studied languages, so I could decipher medieval manuscript. And here I was in the middle of the mountain studying again sounds and linguistics and trying to understand another culture so I could decipher their language. Then I had a doctor in Ayurveda that taught me traditional medicine and how it affects the body, and the yogas and the breathing and the technique and how to use that. There was a cook there that only cooked a traditional food that is appropriate for the yogis so that you eat correctly and so on. I also had personal instructors, a lot of yogis that showed me the poses and everything. I had enrolled in the program there simply because I thought at my age, because by then I was, as you can see, I was not that young, if I don't enroll in any kind of program, I'm not going to make it, right? I'm not going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to meditate, to do yoga for 8 hours, 6 days a week, and only have Sunday free. So I enrolled to the program to give me the motivation to do it, but I didn't go there to become a yoga certified teacher, but I ended up becoming one. I ended up being certified not only by the local yogis, but receiving a certification from India, from the Indian government. So 2 certifications in yoga. And that kind of was an experience I was just not sure. And at that moment also I lived there for about 3.5 years. And my journey then became interesting again because I was folding back. I went back home. I went to France. I reconnected, spent a lot of time with my family, kind of catch up with all the time that I had maybe lost over those years that I hadn't spent with them. So it was just a reconnecting time, and I put 2011 because I keep going back to the Himalayas often, once a year. And then this led me to eventually deciding to write this book. I was writing a novel about the stories and everybody was interested in it, but they were saying there's so many things we don't understand because we don't understand the yogic history. We don't understand yoga. We don't have a whole history. What we know is physical exercise, which is what people practice here. But people don't understand where the history comes from. Where does yoga, where did it originate? They don't have knowledge of the Sanskrit language. They can't read the ancient manuals. They don't have all the information to really understand what yoga is. So I began writing this book, and this book is really a combination of who I am as a person. It's this academic person who came to the US, a student who loved literature, who loved writing through the Rotary Club. It's this person who became a yogini, a practitioner of yoga, picked back on all dreams and continue now to practice things I left behind in 1995. Then it's also this person after 1995, became a professional, has a different understanding of the world beside the books. And also it just is the person that I am today, which tries to bridge the gaps between cultures and knowledge. So this is what the book is about. And I worked on it for about 6 months, but for a longer period of time, 3 months at a time, a very heavy meditation to get a lot of this information, to make sure I was accurate, to make sure I gave the right knowledge. I gave myself a goal of condensing 5,000 years of history, philosophy, and practical application in 200 pages, which is pretty tough things to do. So kind of digging down and getting that, the core essence of yoga. So this is kind of what is inside the book. It's the history, the knowledge, the core disciplines. And as I was working on this, I realized that I had a tool that I didn't have in 1995. I did not have an understanding of the world outside of academics. I only had an understanding of the world in terms of books, in terms of studies, in terms of researching. Now I have an understanding of the world in terms of a business person, a professional, a person who has succeeded. And as I was writing this book, what I realized, it was bringing me back into balance. It was doing something that I needed. It was bringing this person who was this creative person as well as this business person, both creation, engineering mind, and bring it back together. It was aligning me. And now I am able to kind of explain, or I would be able to know how to use yoga techniques so I would not burn out. This is the kind of message I want to pass now to people, is how do you use yoga? How do you use meditation to accomplish the goals you want to accomplish? Relieve your stress. How do you use the practice of pranayama, which is breathing techniques, to decrease your stress but also expand your horizon, to see how it can benefit you as a professional if you have a stressful situation, how simple techniques can help you. I even realized that the other day, I give a lot of speech, I speak a lot, but one of the things I hear all the time is I have a soft voice. And it's funny because I was looking for tools and I realized that if I apply the same techniques that I apply when I do my practice in yoga, which is heavily centered in breathing, if I can train myself from being the practitioner or yoga to being the speaker, I have the tool to project my voice. I have all that I need, I just haven't been doing it. I haven't been breathing properly when I speak. So just getting that new knowledge that I needed to have is, no, you just don't want to be just one thing, follow one dream. You have to be a holistic person so you just don't burn yourself out. But we also have a lot of tools in our passions, and I would urge you to look at what were your passions and your dreams to see how they can complement what you're doing today. Because there may be something in those dreams that you may find that would help you succeed in what you are trying to achieve today, rather than going to look outside. So this is the kind of where the book took me, and it just brought me back to this centered person, to this professional who can also be a creative person. Now, life is funny. How many of you do you believe that something happened just by accident, or there is a reason for some things to happen? How many of you believe accident or reasons?
Reasons.
Okay. How many of you believe that all dreams must come true? If you dream, how many of you believe that? Yes. Yes? Okay.
I think you have to work hard toward your dream in order for it to become successful.
That's right.
You have to work your way.
That's right. And yoga does a lot of that, right? Through the practice of mantras, affirmation, breathing, and meditation. So let's take a look at this. This is very interesting. I wrote the book and I published the ebook version on January 2015. And it's interesting because I was able to do my background in engineering. I did my own coding for the book. I did everything, the self-publishing. I thought it was great. It got me back into the software industry to see all the tools, to see what's available out there. But something funny happened. This is the first print of the book, right? The first ever version of the book, which I brought to you. This is this book. This is this. And I wrote a poem, and I'm going to read this to you because it's a very interesting story. I said, a dream trapped in a place and time. Late afternoon on Thursday, January 29, 2015, I received the first paperback copy of the Philosophy and Science of Yoga, The Power of Self-Expression, 5,000 Years in the Making. As I was holding the book, I felt an immense joy, a sheer joy. This book is real. I could touch it, feel it, and kiss it. No longer words on the screen. It is real. I held on to it. Now I got curious, right? And I peeked inside the book. The pictures were beautiful, and then to my surprise, I suddenly felt a gush of emotion. This book was made in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina. It was printed in Charleston, South Carolina. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my God, this is where it all started. And this book is printed, and it could have been printed anywhere else. It just got printed, and it was the first print of the book. Since then, I've ordered other copy, but this book, this first print ever, was printed in Charleston, South Carolina, on the 20th of January 2015. So really, is it that a coincidence? So in a split second, those words, right? Made in the USA, Charleston, South Carolina, took me back to a time. And you know where that time is, right? 1986. Back again, an exchange student, and I wrote this poem in February. An exchange student in Charleston, South Carolina, full of dreams and hope. I can still remember the heat and the humidity of a hot summer day in the Carolinas. I had just left home. I landed in Charleston, South Carolina. Holding a suitcase in my right hand, I was ready to study, ready to see what it was all about. I was young and bold. I took a deep breath and began my journey in this land. Looking back, decades have passed. A childhood dream was unfolding then, now my reality. Funny how words and dreams remain trapped in a place and time for so long, until we realize how far along we have come. Loose ends are tied, a full circle.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I published a book on April 12, 2015, and happened to walk in the chamber and tell Sylvia that I had just finished the book. And I said to her, you know, she says, well, that was great, can I have a copy? And so on. And then we just got to talk, and she said, well, would you like to give a speech at the Rotary Club? And I said, of course I would like. And now I am on May 1st at the Rotary Club giving you a speech, so thank you.
Samya, thank you very, very much. It was a tremendously interesting story.
Sure.
Tremendously interesting story. And yes, circles keep going around in circles, don't they?
They do.
Yes, indeed. We have to